All right, hello OAS family. For today's featured video, we're going to talk a little bit about our OAS BIFF brush. So this is the BIFF brush. You can see I've already moistened and shapen the BIFF brush into this sort of flat shape that's considered ideal for the type of painting that we're going to do today, which is sort of practicing of bamboo strokes. So if I wet the brush, you can see that if I don't shape it at all, and I just wet the brush does come to a point. So it is kind of a short, fat brush. But for me to paint bamboo strokes or bamboo trunks with it, what I want to do is sort of push my hand against the brush and get it shaped like this so that the stroke can be super consistent. And I think that is what we love, what we've all grown to love about the BIFF brush, is that this bamboo trunk stroke is actually not the super easy stroke to do, and the BIFF brush really makes it much easier because of the shape of the brush. So we're going to try a couple different ink loading methods based on our last video. So what I've done is I've mixed a medium ink and a light ink, and a light ink, a medium ink, and pure ink. So for those of you who have never diluted ink before, it's pretty simple. You just add a small amount of ink and you add differing levels of water to get the different shades of ink that you want. So let me rinse this brush here completely, and we can just do a test stroke so we can see the various levels of ink. So this is what my light ink looks like. Okay, so that's the light ink. And then I'm going to show you what my medium ink looks like. This is the medium ink. Okay, a little bit darker there for the medium ink. And of course the pure ink is going to be straight black. So as we load this, I'm gonna rinse my brush out here. And then I'm going to brush the brush against the side. Those test strokes were actually quite wet, so I'm brushing the brush against the side of the water bowl to get all the excess moisture out. Okay, so that way I will have better moisture control when I actually do my stroke. And so the first loading that I want to do is going to be the most complex kind of loading, which is I'm going to load the brush on the edges. Okay, so and I will load the brush first with the light ink a little bit deeper on each side, loading and flipping the brush and loading it on the edges of the brush. And as I load the darker shades, I'm going to load it shallower and shallower. So as I load the medium ink here, I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to load it a little bit more shallow. And then with the pure ink, I'm going to load it the shallowest, just on the very tip here. Okay, and then what I want to do is find a sort of clean surface to blend the brush. Okay, so I've gotten that loading now, and now we're going to try our bamboo trunk stroke. All right, so there we go. You can see that with that loading, this is sort of what we got from our bamboo trunk stroke. You can see a very subtle change in gradation for this bamboo trunk stroke, and that is because we loaded the brush the way that we did. So now I'm going to just touch the brush to the water, and I'm not going to reload the brush at all, except I'm just going to reload the darkest ink at the edges. Okay, so I didn't reload the brush at all. I just rinsed the brush slightly, but not thoroughly. And what I'm thinking is that's going to result, and then I reload the darkest at the tip, and then I did a little blending. And what I think that's going to produce is a lighter body in the trunk and still some darkness around the edges. So let's see what that is. Yeah, there we go. So now that I have more contrast in the middle there. And then just to play around with the moisture, if I try this stroke again without loading any of the brush at all, you'll see that I'll get a lot more texture. So if you're having trouble with moisture control, it's always good to just, after you painted the stroke where you had trouble controlling the moisture, just go ahead and paint another stroke. And then you'll realize and you'll start to get an idea of, oh yeah, as I release the water onto the paper, the brush gets drier and drier, but it still paints. You can see even on the third try where I'm getting a lot of texture, that's acceptable. You know. So I'm just going to reload the brush again and try different things. Maybe this time I'll get light ink only just on the body, and then the dark ink on the edges. And I'll blend the brush and pick a spot here, maybe here. As far as size-wise on the Biff brush, I'm using the small Biff brush. So the Biff brush comes in two sizes, small and large. And you can see the width of strokes that the small is able to produce. And it can actually go wider. So maybe that's what I'll show next, is if we want to sort of push this brush to its maximum width, then it's really just involving creating a little bit more pressure, downward pressure, and then we can get a wider stroke. It's quite addictive using this. So for those of you who have some materials and have not really had a lot of painting or practice sessions, I know, I understand why you could get into a situation like that. I think it's very easy with something that feels so foreign like this to get in a place where you're just trying to endlessly gather information. But it's very important to realize that a lot of learning, especially in Chinese brush painting, will be done through trial and error. And you can study it forever, and you can gather all kinds of information. But even in information gathering, it's going to be more powerful if you have the input of your own experience to put the information that you're consuming in context. So the more that you do, the clearer the questions that you ask, and the clearer the questions that you ask, the clearer the answers that you'll get. So we're going to just keep going here so we can fill up the paper. I really like that aesthetic on that stroke that I just did, where you're getting that sort of lighter body with that subtle outline of ink on the outside. That's kind of like my favorite style, but you know, it doesn't really matter. All of these have their own appeal, and so it is my assurance to you that if you paint often enough, you will eventually end up with something that you really like. And even if you don't like what you're painting initially, it's important in my experience to finish the painting and then just set it aside. Because a lot of times what happens is that your opinion of what you're painting is sort of unfairly clouded by your expectations. You know, you expect certain things to happen, and then when they happen differently, you judge the process very harshly. And so oftentimes when you finish the painting and just set it aside and you go back and look at what you did without the sting of your expectations, then you will like it more than you did initially. You know, your opinions of these things are fluid. And so it's important to not just, you know, we have this kind of classic, you know, if you see like somebody who is writing, you know, like that classic writer who's writing, and then they are writing like, oh, the night was blah, the night was moist, then it was like that scene from Throw Mama from the Train, that sort of writer's block kind of feeling where you're just writing one short sentence and then tearing up the paper and then starting over. It really is not the way Chinese brush painters think. You know, perfection is a process, and it's actually often quite a bunch of happy accidents that end up in a desirable place. And so it's important to not judge each occurrence too harshly, and to just follow the path, making the best choices that you can make to the end of a finished painting. And then that is definitely a mindset that almost all people who are producing finished work that they end up being satisfied with, that is really a mindset that serves them. So we're just filling up the paper here, just seeing what these different ink values and ink shades can produce. And we're, you know, learning a lot of subtle things along the way, learning how to target the things that we like the most. And so if you haven't tried our Biff brush yet, I would highly recommend you trying it. It really does take the frustration out of these bamboo trunks, and it takes away that frustration and really opens up the ability to produce something consistent. And so try it. It's really great. You can find it on our website at orientalartsupply.com. Thanks again for watching, and make sure you like and subscribe this video if you want more content like this. And as always, we wish you happy painting.